I think the problem is that I can't suspend my disbelief when I'm watching TikToks. Now, let me clarify. When I say TikToks, number one, I don't mean TikToks, right? I mean the content format formerly known as TikTok, that the all-consuming media machine of Meta has duped in the way that it did Snapchat stories. Meta built previously Facebook, but I'm up with the trends, so I'm going to call it Meta. So just keep up, Grandpa. Meta tried to buy Snapchat. Snapchat said no. So Meta, then Facebook, took the best idea it had, which was stories, and built it into its way more fun app, Instagram. And then Snapchat was basically dead. And then Instagram became even more addictive than it ever was. And then TikTok appeared. I think it used to be Musical.ly or whatever. And again, Meta just went, not having that, mate. We do the do around here. So they integrated, Reels. But unlike with stories, which I now think of as a Meta product, I think of as an inherent part of Instagram. I think of Reels, I still think of them as TikToks, because I think, like, even when you see them on Instagram, they often have the TikTok logo on them, which, if I was in the head offices of Instagram and or Meta, I would be very embarrassed about, because I do not think it goes the other way. And I think of them as TikToks, these short pieces of content that, endlessly loop. I think of them as TikTok, even though I don't have TikTok. I think that I didn't, again, to hark back to the history of these social media apps, I didn't get Snapchat, as in I literally didn't understand it, and then only therefore had it on my phone for a brief period of time. I still have an account. I'm sure it's been hacked by Russian bots at this moment in time. But I just didn't vibe with it that much. I never got into the hang of using it, so I just never formed an emotional attachment to it. So I got rid of it way before it was cool to get rid of it. And then when it died, I was like, well, I was prescient, I was ahead of the curve in that sense. I saw this demise coming, so don't worry about it, boys. I pre-deleted mine years ago. All good. And that's nice. That's nice to feel that way. And then with TikTok, I just straight up didn't get it. I've seen it. Have I? I've seen it in the browser. Like, I've seen it in Safari, right? Including on my computer on Safari. And it used to be that you could just scroll it that way. But now I think they want you to log in. And even on my phone, it's like, oh, do this test. And there's a few reasons I haven't got it. One of them being that more than any other, I think it's just a data mining app. And as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more aware of the digital footprint that I'm leaving behind and thinking of how I can reduce that footprint. So an app developed outside of the West, harvesting data in that way, and it seems to be in a more intense way than maybe other apps even, No. So I just didn't do it. But also it just seems like it's tailored for an audience that is not me. It seems like it's just a bit skews younger, skews more attached to their phones than I am. So for all those reasons, I never got it. But it's obvious the influence that it's had, especially on whatever this format medium is, which is, I don't know, the next step on stories. They seem to be the same thing, and basically the only thing that differentiates them on Instagram is like you either swipe up or swipe left and right. I can't tell, right? But I say this, I'm immediately about to pish them, but the truth is that I'm completely addicted to them as much as anybody else is. Like, I fall asleep having scrolled a decent number of these. I wake up, I instinctively grab my phone to do something quote unquote necessary, like check the time, despite the fact I have a watch. Could just check that, check the time, check my blood glucose. Okay, there is something I have to do on the phone, but like that's not really the reason I pick it up. And I find myself every single morning, as I do every single night, saying, oh, well, there's no real reason for me to check Instagram. And yet I'm looking at it, right? So I'm just as addicted as anyone else. So that I can't even lay claim to. But the problem is that I cannot suspend my disbelief. I cannot watch these TikToks, these short videos, and take them at face value. I can't just consume them. I do consume them at a rate of knots, but I can't just be like, oh, fun, dance, or good content, move on. Especially when it comes to the more scripted ones, because there's shit ones, there's just like whatever, and there's just memes, like shitpost kind of meme level content, all good, like great content, love all that. But when it comes to like anything scripted, including like doing a dance, I cannot, like, you're supposed to believe, or you're supposed to be immersed in the moment. And you're supposed to just take it in and enjoy it, or laugh or dance or whatever. But I can't help but put myself behind the scenes with the creator in the moment that they're creating it. And therefore, I cannot possibly take it seriously. Like, when there's freaking teenagers, children, trying to do these like hot, sexy dances, all I can think about is the 1,500 takes that it took for them to get here, right? Like practicing in the mirror and cursing. And there's a few brilliant videos where this moment kind of happens. Like somebody walks into the bathroom as like this person is like in the throes of this dance. And again, like when it's children, essentially, their parents walk in or a teacher walks into the school bathroom, and it's incredible. And that's the truth. That's the moment that I live for, is them being interrupted, because like, sure, in those videos you're being shared the moment that they got interrupted, but the truth of the matter is that they themselves have interrupted themselves myriad times before they've posted the content. There's, we've spoken before about low effort and being bored or not. And nobody just like watches one of the trend clips, right? Where it's like, oh, this sound is hot right now. And then puts their phone down and records their 6-second, 10-second response. No, it doesn't, it's not organic, but because you scroll just bosh between the TikToks themselves, it seems like, oh man, this trend's been done by everyone and it's all happened today. And that's the buzz of the feeling of the trend, right? You hear the same song, sound, clip over and over again, and 20 people in a row have done the dance or their variation on it, and that's all fun. But it didn't happen like that. And every single one of them, I as I scroll through, I live the day in their life where they're just like, oh fuck, this song is really hot. Actually, I keep hearing it. So this person that I try to emulate, they've got 10 million followers to my 1 million, and I really want to be them, and they've posted this video and this song's super hot, and now I have to do my own version. I don't want to, I have to. If I want to stay hot, relevant, I got to jump on this. And then they're like, oh, when will I do this today? Will I do this while I'm at school? Will I do this before I do my homework? Will my mom interrupt me learning this? This is a particularly complicated dance and I've got to do this. And like, oh, I don't know if my body can do that. And oh, that's kind of fun. And then, that's if it's a dance. And if it's one of these more like complicated ones where it's like, there's one that's doing the rounds at the moment where it's like you kind of drop down, and every time you drop past a certain point, something in the foreground kind of obscures you and your outfit completely changes. And that just the work that goes into that. And, because they've chosen that outfits, they've changed into outfits, they've set the thing up again, like, so like I just am overwhelmed. And then and then they've done all that, like they've done all the recording, they've done all the stuff, and then I think about, oh, what video editing software do they use? Are they a Premiere Pro kind of house? Like what's the vibe? Like do they ever have any export issues? How much are they paying for cloud storage? Is that what's their storage solution for these rough and then completed video files? Did they ever find that they record something and then they can't do it? And I think that's what gets to me, is that the sheer effort is incredible, and of course it's for what, 6 seconds, like I say, of content. And here I am, just going through this like nothing, like, going through it like you're eating crisps, like just not even paying attention, just putting one in your mouth, whatever. But like, what I'm trying to express is that imagine if you were eating a bowl of crisps, and every time you put one in your mouth, you thought about, you just had this like life flashing before your eyes moment of the potato being planted, growing, being harvested, being treated, being chopped up, placed in the bag, all of this stuff. As I flipped through my reels, as I feverishly smash through this content, you're eating the crisps whilst you're sat on the sofa, like watching something. Me, I'm lying sideways in my goddamn bed, blinding myself with white light from this tiny oblong. Everything else is, shut off, and I'm zipping through in the same way, just like more. Completely cannot stop. It's just this addictive repetition, even less effort than raising something to your mouth is just shripping with the thumb. but if I'm doing that, if I linger for more than a millisecond, if I can see into the eyes of the creator, then what I go through is, as I say, this whole whole empathic like overload, where I'm just like, that I can see what this took you. And I think about the ones where it's like, there's a lot of couples, right? On Instagram or on social, there's like a lot of couples, and whether they do funny stuff together, whether it's like they follow these trends, or whether it's more scripted, I just think about the couples arguing. I think about them having shitty little arguments, being like, because it's a lot to be a creative person, right? It's a lot to be creating this kind of content, and if you're scripting it, then it's a lot. But if you're doing it with your partner, then it's this whole other level. Like, no matter what you're doing, whether you're just doing dumb reels or whatever else, it's a lot to do it and have these discussions and be civil and not get angry at one another. And I'm just imagining the arguments that they must go through. Again, which is hard enough if you're producing a TV show or making a film together. But like, if you're supposed to be making these very irreverent pieces of easily digestible content, then it's somehow even more funny if you're getting into arguments as a couple about it. We're all familiar with the concept, right? Like, I've watched this, we've watched entire documentaries on like bands who have creative differences because, you spend time together in the studio and you think you've done something collectively, but then you listen back to it and you disagree, or, you just have different visions. And I just think about that because, again, a lot of the scripted content and a lot of the sort of trends that the social couples are like trying to jump onto or trying to get across, often it's about an aspect of their relationship. And I cannot for the life of me just like take it at face value and just enjoy it. I'm like, well, I wonder how this reflects on their relationship. I wonder if they're joking about, like, if the trend is about one of them cheating on the other, then I wonder if one of them has. I wonder if one of them is letting it go through their head that they have cheated on their partner and this is a bit too close to home. And I just am right there in the room with them. And again, it's just like when you're a huge band, or when you're making a TV show, or when you're making a movie, those people being more human, I guess, and having those kind of creative differences and letting it blow up and whatever, those seems to be merited. It seems to be, or at least in my mind, it seems part of the territory and sort of permissible, I guess, in that way. But the truth is that when I look at these socials, and it just doesn't seem worthwhile. But then again, that's crazy because, in my head I'm dismissing it. I'm like, well, why would you have a creative discussion about what's going on your reel, and why would you have a creative difference within your couple, within your relationship? Why would you let your Instagram presence, even if it is the combined presence of you as a couple, why would you let that ruin potentially your relationship? Or why would you let it form your relationship? Why would your relationship be about making shit for the internet? But of course that's crazy to dismiss that, because I'm here making shit for the internet, and I'm here lying in my bed at night rabidly consuming shit that's made for the internet. And these guys, I suppose not all of them, but a decent number of them, are making a living doing this. So of course it's the same thing. But again, then like, I don't know, the nature with which my brain is digesting all of this. I am thinking about all of this almost every time I watch Reels, and I'm just thinking about what's it really like? What's it really like in their house? Like, what's actually going on when these couples are joking about their relationship? What happens afterwards when the moment they put down the phone or put down the camera and have dinner together? What do they talk about? Do they talk about something else, or do they talk about what they've seen on Instagram? Because at some point it must just get so self-reflective. What am I trying to say? Like, it's such a tiny bubble, right? Because you can become an influencer in a short space of time. I understand people put in the work, but it's not the same length of time as if you become a star of screen, because of the nature of, like, you put something out, you might go viral that day, you might be out of fashion in 3 weeks. So if you're one of those influencers, or if you're with a partner and you're both trying to sustain it, or you're sustaining it as part of your relationship, like, how much does that dynamic influence your day-to-day life? Not just because it's your job, but also because you must have to keep up with it in an even more rabid way than I'm catching up with it. And I think of my addiction as being unhealthy. So it must be just like all consuming and almost feel inescapable at some time. And I just think about what happens when the phone goes down. What happens when the content goes bad? What happens when it doesn't go viral? Do you blame yourself? Do you blame the other person? What happens when your shit doesn't pop? As a solo influencer, who do you turn to? And if you're in an influencer couple, romantic or otherwise, what are those arguments like? Do you blame one another? Do you argue about it? Was it someone who wasn't funnier than the other? Somebody didn't learn their lines, so one focused on their lines too much and not enough? And I think about this a lot. I mean, I think about this a lot when I'm watching TV shows and films as well. And the truth is that, like, I think that's kind of the price of making stuff yourself. I distinctly remember losing the ability to just hear music. Because, well, no, I distinctly remember the opposite. I distinctly remember gaining the ability to hear a song and you break it up into all its parts. Like you can hear, like, oh, here's that instrument, there's the drums, and you can, like, shift your focus and build a mental map or a physical map of what's happening to make this piece of music, this sound, but you can hear the constituent elements that make it up. And I think that happens when you learn to play an instrument, and I think that happens when you start to play music and join a band, which all of those things I did, I don't know, 15 years ago, more, 20. And you suddenly, and you can't go back. You can't ever hear music again as someone who doesn't think about how it's put together. Like, it's not distracting necessarily, it's just totally different. You just, for me at least, I hear music all the time fractured into those pieces. You can consider the whole, but it doesn't take a lot to shift your focus and consider the individual elements. And in the same way, like, I'm watching a TV show and I'm thinking about the scripting, and I'm thinking about the actors. I'm thinking about what happens when they say cut, and I'm thinking about whether they turn to each other and say, oh yeah, we smashed it in that scene. I'm watching a terrible show at the moment. I think, we have so much good content available that you forget that there's a lot of just like landfill content as well. And I'm watching definitely one of the latter at the moment. And I just think about that. Like at the end of the scene, do they go like, fuck yeah, we nailed it? Or do they know? They're kind of like, this isn't The Sopranos. This isn't whatever. And I'm thinking about all that. And like, there's a moment like when you're supposed to believe they're in like a dream sequence. And all I can see is like, oh, well, there's CGI work. And I wonder what conversation they had with the CGI team to get this. And I wonder if they thought they nailed it. And there's all those layers on layers on layers of things that go into those shows. And I don't know, I'm still able to enjoy stuff. Again, you're able to like zoom out and take in the whole. But definitely you just view it through a different lens. And pun intended, I suppose, because I think about it here, like I'm lying here, like I think about what it took me to set up my mic and set up the camera and do all of those things. And I weigh those off against like, well, what's the output? And making music as well. Like I think of how much goes into it, and like all the literal instruments, and then the non-literal instruments like the laptop, and all these parts go into it to make the whole. And then it just kind of has translated completely to this kind of social content. And, I know there's a moment in the Bo Burnham thing, the COVID Bo Burnham thing, where there's many moments where he sort of completely loses it. And there's a bit where he's trying to record a vocal over and over again, and he just like flips out, and he's just like swearing and cursing at himself about how he didn't get the take right. And that's what I imagine. I just imagine, like, as I'm watching each Instagram content, I just imagine that the take before was this like teenage girl just like screaming into the ether because she couldn't get it right. Like there's so much recorded evidence of me just shouting into the mic because I didn't get the previous take right. But then, of course, the one that I pressed, the one that I put out, is the one where I did get it right. And, so you live in this kind of like, I am always consuming content in this way that's fractured between what came to exist and then what definitely was left on the cutting room floor. And I think what's just so interesting about social is that it's supposed to come across as natural, and it's supposed to come across as not that constructed. And it's it's supposed to be off the cuff, and you're supposed to be right there with the influencers. And some people are good at it, and some people I assume just like speak very naturally into the camera, and maybe they do nail it first time, but not when you're trying to hit these trends and not when you're trying to hit these scripts. You, of course, have to put in this immense amount of work. And that's what's going through my mind. As I say, I'm just scrolling all this and I'm thinking about all these people's lives, and how hard they're all working, and what it will mean. What will they turn their talents to when Instagram is no more? Will they become will they make TV? Will they make film? Will they use all these skills? Because they have all these skill sets, and they've become incredible video editors and dancers and comedians. And it's amazing the kind of stuff that people can create, but they are all people. And when this social thing runs out and brands no longer want to put money behind you doing this stuff on Instagram, you know, where does it go from there? And where do you put all these talents? So it's a very strange line that I'm walking between just consuming this stuff without thinking about it and living this very empathetic moment with this content creator as they've shared themselves with the world, but only a very specific part of themselves. And yeah, I mean, that's the best part, is that like you just don't know which part you're getting. And especially when influencers are trying to come off a certain way, or the trend demands that you come off a certain way. Like there's so many where it's like the influencer kind of looks like whatever before. It's like the moment in the sort of teen movie where the nerd girl like finally lets down her hair and takes off her glasses, and you know, and just the sun hits her in such a way, and you realize, and the whole school realizes that, oh, the nerdy girl isn't so nerdy. She's actually the hottest among us after all. There's so many TikToks that are like that. And I think of these young people making the hot versions of themselves and making the frumpy versions of themselves and working really hard on that. And then watching back these reels and saying, you know, I didn't believe myself when I tried to hit that hotness. I wasn't hot enough and I should have another go. And here I am, you know, like I say, just lying back and pressing record. And I wonder if anybody is thinking about what it's like for me. And I wonder if anybody would ever think about what's going on in my head while I create stuff, music, you know, because it completely distracts me from my nightly scroll. And that's what I think the problem is.